The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, the 27th of January, 2016, opened up with gold at $1,120 an ounce, silver $14.48 an ounce, Texas crude $31.45 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 395 U.S. currency. Today in history, Thursday, January 27th, 1825. The U.S. Congress approves Indian Territory in what is present-day Oklahoma. This cleared the way for the forced relocation of Eastern Indians, known as the Trail of Tears. In recent news, the Vatican announced over the weekend that Pope Francis will be visiting Sweden later this year to mark the 500th anniversary of Martin Luther's writing and posting of the 95 Theses on the front doors of All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany, October 31st, 1517. Amongst other points, Luther primarily wrote argumentations against the Roman Catholic theology of indulgences, essentially the selling of forgiveness from temporal punishment, from sins for money, a practice still upheld by the Church. On October 31st of this year, Francis is set to be at the southern Swedish city of Lund, where the Lutheran World Federation was founded in 1947. While his predecessors have visited Protestant churches, Francis has come under criticism from traditionalists and conservatives within the Church who accuse him of sending conflicting signals about interfaith relations. Catholic traditionalists have accused Francis of making too many concessions to Lutherans, since both religions will be using Luther's Common Prayer during the 2017 Reformation commemoration services being held jointly between the two churches, which they say excessively praise Luther, who was historically condemned as a heretic and excommunicated. Pope Francis has made ecumenism one of the main themes of his papacy, considering he has already visited the Lutheran Church of Rome, the Waldensian Protestant community in northern Italy, Rome's Jewish synagogue, and is soon due to become the first pope to visit Rome's mosque later this year. Marvin Minsky, a pioneer in the field of artificial intelligence at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, died Sunday at the age of 88. Minsky viewed the brain as a machine whose function can be studied and replicated in a computer, and he considered how machines might be endowed with common sense, or artificial intelligence. Daniela Russ, director of MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, said that Minsky helped create the vision of artificial intelligence as we know it today. This was your lowdown for January 27th, 2016.
Good evening and welcome here on this rather chilly here in New York City anyway, 9th of February, Tuesday, February 9th, 2016. It's time for INN World Report Radio now on the Great Logos Radio Network, so we hope to be warming things up for you if they are not warm already where you are. So there you have it. My name is Tom Kiley, and I've got the honor to bring this radio program to you 2 nights a week on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and we just try to get to news and information that is helpful to us. We are particularly interested in getting to news and information that is not readily available in the mainstream media or is being actively blocked, even better. And so in that spirit, we've got 2 guests for you tonight, and they'll be joining us. The first one will be joining us in about 25 minutes or so. Meanwhile, I'm going to have the phone lines open in case you'd like to call in. 512-646-1984. Phone lines wide open right now. Anybody can call in. As a matter of fact, let me check to make sure that they are on. Turn the phone lines on. Let's see here. I'm going to do that right now. Bang. All right, y'all. There you have it. 512-646-1984. And you can get right through. Nobody's on the line. And while I'm waiting for the first person to step up to the plate and call, let me tell you about who's going to be on the show tonight. For the first time, a gentleman from England, and his name is Paul Krishnamurti. And we're going to be talking with Paul. He's actually here in the United States on a mission. He's a professional gambler. And as many of you know, or I presume you do know, that gambling in England is legal, and they've got all kinds of betting parlors and so forth. Racetrack, horses, that sort of thing. But you can also bet on just about anything you want. I think they have that in Las Vegas as well, but I believe in England it's a countrywide situation. And of course, the U.S. presidential election is always a hotly contested, race on which people bet. Now, and that's why Mr. Krishnamurti is here in the country, because he's covering that for the betting public and I suppose the betting industry in England. And I'm not a gambler. I don't condone it if that's what you want to do. And, I'm a bit of a libertarian. So, if you're doing it and it's legal where you're doing it, that's your business. However, the reason I want to speak with Mr. Krishnamurti is because I believe that there's a certain logic involved here when people are putting their money up, and I've heard it said many times that in such cases, sort of the betting public usually has, it's kind of like, I don't know, the extended brain or something like that. What was that thing on Star Trek? The cyborg or something, where all these people's ideas all put together tend to be rather accurate, generally speaking. So I want to get to the bottom of that. I want to find out about it. So Mr. Krishnamurti will be joining us, and we'll be talking with him about that for about 45 minutes or so. Then, in the last section of the show, we will be joined by Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. Rabbi Shapiro, fellow New Yorker here, or if you prefer, a fellow New Yorker, who is in the next county northeast of me in Queens, in Bayside, Queens, has just returned from Israel, where he took stock of the situation. He was visiting family over there. And if you have not heard Rabbi Shapiro on the program before, you're in for a real treat, because he is a great scholar. He is an ultra-Orthodox rabbi here in New York, a great scholar in the great learned tradition of that religion, and he has chosen to focus on the history of Zionism. And he's the best person I know on the subject. He knows this stuff inside out. And our good friend Gilad Atzmon, who approaches the same issue from an entirely different angle. Gilad is entirely secular. He's not religious whatsoever. In fact, Gilad was born in Israel, or as he calls it, occupied Palestine. He doesn't even think of himself as an Israeli anymore, or a Jew for that matter. But the two of them know a great deal about Zionism and its history. And, I put an event together last May. I sent it out. If you want to get the links, just let me know, or go to YouTube and search for Shapiro and Atzmon, Shapiro and Atzmon, and you'll see it in two parts. It was a great event that we had here in New York, where the two of them spoke about Zionism and how it really is a totally separate thing from Judaism, which, according to the good rabbi, in fact, perhaps Gilad too, but at least according to the rabbi, is the definition of being a Jew if you are a practitioner of the Jewish religion, of Judaism. And the rest of it, it's not a country, it's not a culture. There's no Jewish country up until recently when Zionism carved out and took from the Palestinian people much of Palestine and declared it the Jewish state. But heretofore, there's been no such thing as a Jewish culture, language, ethnicity even. So that's what we'll be talking about a little bit with Rabbi Shapiro. And on that score, by the way, next Thursday night, a week from Thursday, we'll be joined for the first time by Professor Norton Mezvinsky, who is also an expert on the subject. He taught in Connecticut for a long time. I don't know. I think he's still teaching. And he is a great scholar, on the subject as well. And we'll be talking with him. The subject of that night's show or interview with Norman will be the fact that the state of Israel derives incredible support, financially, militarily, politically, propaganda-wise, and everything else from the United States. And what would happen if that support was withdrawn, and how might that happen? And that may be, in the end, the only sort of mitigating factor to cool the jets of the Zionists in Israel, which, seem to be really running amok with the Palestinian people. Anyhow, that's what's coming up on the show. So 512-646-1984, you can get right through, and that would be a good thing. Now, of course, as we speak, I suppose they're finishing up the primary in New Hampshire. Let's see what that says. If we have any headlines here. Donald Trump is slated to win. New exit polls, New Hampshire voters concerned with economy and government. And what do you think? 512-646-1984. The New Hampshire primary right now. It looks like Bernie Sanders ought to be winning that, and Donald Trump, the second sort of real contest in the primary season. And what does it say? Donald Trump sort of, I don't know how you want to look at it. He got humbled a little bit in Iowa, but then again, it looks like there were some dirty tricks involved at the last minute, some shenanigans being played by the Cruz campaign to sort of diminish the vote for Ben Carson and get that vote to go instead to Ted Cruz. Without that happening, it may have been a tie, or maybe Trump might have even won. But we'll see. More and more people are coming out against Trump on the right and the left. I don't know if you're familiar, but Webster Tarpley and the Tax Wall Street Party is just excoriating Donald Trump from the left. And, it's making for strange bedfellows, because people on the right who that group really disagrees with are doing the same thing, excoriating Trump. For instance, I think one of the big campaign people for Mitt Romney came out, and maybe even Romney himself now is coming out against Trump. So, it's very interesting, I find, when people on the right and the left are attacking somebody who's picking up the mantle. The anger that is propelling Donald Trump, and for that matter Bernie Sanders, is a manifestation, in my opinion, of the global, worldwide anger that the awakening peoples of the world are expressing against this incredibly sick and twisted and gamed and rigged system that we all live under, where there are endless wars, where people can't live in peace, where a very, very small group of people control an inordinate amount of power and wealth. 62 families now, Oxfam reports to us, or not even families, they say individuals at this point, are in possession of one half of the world's wealth. If you think that was all gained fair and square, I got a bridge I'll sell you real cheap right over here, 10-minute walk from my house that goes to Manhattan, called the Brooklyn Bridge. And that class of people is making out greater and greater and greater, while the rest of humanity is suffering. And it's not just people in developing countries anymore. It is also now people in what we typically refer to as the developed world. Greece is being squeezed for every penny that it has. The people there are suffering to pay these people. They're not making money anymore off of a great economy. They're making money off of squeezing people, charging them usurious rates of interest on money that they make out of nothing. And people are getting angry. And a great deal of the anger is due to the fact that they cannot have a champion for their plight. The money power has bought out both sides of the political spectrum in most countries. So you have typically the right and the left in the past would do battle with each other, try to show you where they could do better for you than the other. And but that's for quite some time, certainly since Clinton. I'll take it back to Ronald Reagan, that both right and left, Democrats and Republicans have been bought off by the same people, and nothing's getting done. Red state, blue state, right down the middle. It's just a cover to provide you with some sort of rationale as to understand why there is such intransigence in the country. There is such stalemate going on. There is such, in that intransigence, everyone suffers, but the very, very small amount of people who are putting the money into it to maintain that situation. People are waking up to this all over the world. And from the traditional parties, you can't get somebody rising to champion that anger because they've been bought off. So that's why you see non-traditional candidates and parties emerging. That's why you see Syriza in Greece. That's why you see Podemos in Spain. That's why you see the Scottish independence vote that happened last year. That's why you see Jeremy Corbyn in England, the socialist. That's why you see Bernie Sanders in the United States, the socialist. That's why you see Marine Le Pen in France, the ultra-right nationalist. And that's why you see Donald Trump. Anyhow, that's the way I see it. What do you think? 512-646-1984. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, right back after these messages for you.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio, coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York, where it is rather chilly and a light dusting of snow is beginning to settle on us. And I hope it's not so cold where you are. Very interesting winter so far. Last year, at the end of the year, we were in the 70s around Christmas time, and then we had the biggest, second largest snowfall in the history of New York City, since they've been keeping records in 24 hours. And now it's cold again, on again, off again. What's it like where you are? 512-646-1984. Been getting some nice email from you all. Thank you very much, and keep it coming. It's easy to do, especially you folks who've been lurking out there. You've been listening for a while, and reach out, say hi. It's easy to do. Just email me at info, that is like information, info, at innradio.com, and I'll be happy to correspond with you. I just get lots of encouragement from your thoughts and sometimes critiques and suggestions and all the rest. It's all welcome like that. Now, we've got two guests for you later on in the program. In fact, the next segment, we'll start. I already told you about them, but in case you just tuned in, Paul Krishnamurti is going to be with us for the first time. He's from England, and he's over here monitoring our election, presidential election, where they bet on it in England. I guess they do in Las Vegas too, but in England, it's a countrywide thing. And, I'm not into gambling per se, but I do find it interesting, and I want to hear from him the way that they gauge this, because as I understand it, as with some other things, the betting public has an uncanny sense of being fairly accurate. So how about that? And then Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. It's been a while since we had the good rabbi on the show. He's associated with a group of students that have put up a Facebook page that talks about the difference between Zionism and Judaism, and they're making some headway. It's a very important issue for them. And, there's a war going on, apparently. There's a war between, the heart and soul of the Jews, for lack of a better term. It is the heart and soul of the Jews is the religion of Judaism. At least that's what the rabbis tell me. And I have no reason to doubt that. And it's when you think of it, it makes sense on its face. There is no until the creation, the artificial state of Israel was created by taking land from the Palestinians under, I don't care what pretext, that's a fact, it was taken. Until that happened, I don't know, maybe you'd have to go back a couple thousand years before you found a place that was a country. And I don't even know the exact metrics on that. But for a very long time now, the Jews have been different people in different countries, the American, German, Russian, I dare say Chinese, certainly Ethiopian, European, South American, all of that sort of thing. So it's not like a nationality, and certainly not like an ethnicity particularly. Anybody can be a Jew if you accept the tenets of the Jewish religion properly. So, it makes for a very difficult situation. And unfortunately, the anti-Semites out there and the Zionists want to confuse you and want to lead you to believe that there is no difference between Zionism and Zionists and Jews and Judaism. And that's not the case. There are many, many reverent religious Jewish people out there who want nothing to do with Israel or Zionism. And Rabbi Shapiro, well, he certainly has a lot to say about that. I can't speak for him, but he'll be on the show later on to speak for himself, and that's that. So why don't you give us a ring, 512-646-1984. I'm trying to watch what's going on in New Hampshire. It is very, very interesting to me how everybody is trying to stop Donald Trump, and that includes the news media and so forth, and you're using all kinds of devices. Hillary Clinton is in trouble for a lot of reasons. In her battle for the White House, it looks like she's in trouble again, like she was 8 years ago when she was trying to run against Barack Obama, and he's watching it slip away from her. And I hope it does. She's also perhaps in trouble legally because of her attempts to hide her emails from the scrutiny of the government and the public when she had her own email server while she was Secretary of State. Now, apparently at the time, it was okay to do that, provided that it was secure and the rest of it. But doesn't look like it was secure. And you're only going to do that, friends, if you want to hide stuff, all right? The government is like many, many other employers. If you use your employer's email system, then whether it's personal information or not, it's available to them. And they have the right to consider it like that rather than have to try to sort through things and pick through things. you have personal email, use a different email account. Don't use your work email. That should be something that most people realize. And conversely, if you've got work to do or something related to your job, it should be done on your company's email server so that a proper record of it can be kept. And that's the law in some industries, such as the financial industry. Hillary Clinton did not use her company server, which would be the State Department, the United States government. She used her own, which apparently was a workaround you could do back in those days. I understand that's been closed. And she conducted a mixture of personal business and State Department business on that server. Well, I would imagine that the law would require that copies of every piece of email that went on there, at least the ones that were related to her State Department business, would have to be on file with the government. There's reasons for that. For one thing, the archives, the National Archives, what happened in history. You know, it belongs to we the people. And if any impropriety appears to happen, it'll be a record that people can go and take a look at. Well, she didn't want that kind of scrutiny. And I don't know if she handed over her emails before this became an issue, but she certainly had to hand over more of them anyway after it became an issue. And that's the problem. Who's to say we're to trust an individual that what they're handing over is, you know, everything that there is to concern ourselves with the public's business. And I don't think that's right. It should have been an independent review to determine. And then it turns out that not everything was turned over. And then it turns out that the FBI, I believe, confiscated the hard drives on this server. And, you know, they have ways of digging down and finding erased material. And then apparently there was a lot of material that was erased, or important material that was erased that should have been turned over that wasn't. So she could be in trouble for that. Now, typically, there are laws for we the people and there are laws for everybody else, or for the handful of people who work for the oligarchy, and certainly the oligarchs themselves. So, you know, whether or not this becomes an issue for Hillary Clinton legally, I don't know. Every indication is that the FBI is taking this very seriously, and it could cause a political crisis in the sense that if they are kept from doing their job properly, people could get very upset about it, and there's people threatening to quit the FBI and so forth if that's the case. Additionally, you know, back to what I said earlier, there are laws and there are laws. The President of the United States, like governors and so forth, has the power to pardon people, and I have a big issue with the way that power is used, okay? Because it's one thing for someone to have committed a crime and be convicted of that crime, and then for a president to pardon them for whatever circumstances they feel justifies it. It's an entirely different matter, however, to pardon someone in advance of even being found guilty, much less going to trial, which is the way that they use them to block the public record. George H.W. Bush did that with Caspar Weinberger, and that may happen with Hillary Clinton, too, if it devolves to that. Okay, we're going to take a break. Paul Krishnamurti will be joining us.
Should parents be fingerprinted to drop off their kids at daycare? Mississippi says yes, but only low-income parents are being targeted. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with more on this privacy rights issue next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
In Mississippi, low-income parents are getting an ultimatum at daycare centers. Give up your biometric data or do without daycare. Under Mississippi's program, parents who receive state subsidies for childcare must have all 10 of their fingerprints scanned, with no exceptions. Wealthier parents who can afford to pay for daycare don't have to do this. State officials are trying to justify this policy by saying that poor parents could be committing fraud, but they're applying the policy to the innocent as well, of course. So when did the working poor become suspects? No parent in America should be treated like a criminal just to get childcare. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, Tuesdays nights and Thursday nights here on the Great Logos Radio Network. Okay, now for the first time ever on the program, we're joined by Paul Krishnamurti. He is a professional gambler. He works out of England, covering over here in the United States, covering the U.S. presidential elections, where they bet on the outcome of that, just like they do here, except in England, I believe it's nationwide. Here in the U.S., it's limited to places like Las Vegas. And we're going to find out some interesting stuff, I'm sure. I'm not particularly an exponent of gambling or anything like that, but I do understand that there's a sort of an innate sense that gambling, professional gambling has that seems to be fairly accurate most of the time, or much of the time anyway. Let's find out. Paul, welcome to INN World Report Radio.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Very good, Paul, and I'm just getting to meet you right now. I can say, first of all, you do not disappoint. It sounds like a South London accent. I don't know, but I was expecting something. East, that's what I meant. Yeah, East End. That's what I meant. It sounds like you sound like an East Ender. I don't know if it's true or not, but I would expect a professional. Now, here's another thing I want you to help me with. Who's the punter? Is that the person doing the gambling or the person taking the bets?
The punter is the person doing the gambling, and the bookie is the one taking the bets, the bookmaker. I actually do a combination of both because the site on which I make most of my money and the site which I also do analysis for is called Betfair.com, and it's a peer-to-peer betting exchange where you can be either the punter or the bookie.
Okay.
And the odds move in real time. It's like a stock exchange, so you can buy or sell a position on anything as it moves up and down.
Right, and I'm not big into gambling. I'll buy the occasional lottery ticket, when it's up to $1 billion or something like that. But and I recognize the dangers in that. That a lot of people can't handle it, just like some people can't handle alcohol. But there is a sort of an innate sort of a mindset that seems to put a lot into this. I guess when you put your money on the line, you're taking guessing a lot more seriously. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all of my betting it's very serious business. It's based on analysis and statistics and history and, a deep overview of whatever market I'm playing, whether it's a sports market or a political market.
So then let's talk about the political market, particularly here in the United States. And I also assume that such betting, unlike here in the States where it's limited to places like Las Vegas, is legal nationwide in England. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think UK has the most liberal gambling laws in the world. Very different to the United States, where although you can gamble at racetracks and at Vegas, you can't do political betting anywhere other than a few sites where the stakes are restricted. So UK really is the home of political betting. It started there and it's easily the biggest market.
Now, what about people who live in the United States? Can they get around the U.S. laws by participating in the UK market through the internet or something like that, or are there laws that restrict that sort of thing? They
would need to have a passport or an address or a bank account in a country where Betfair was legal. In the US, it's blocked. You did used to have a website in 2012. There was a website called intrade.com, which is very similar. It's kind of like a shadow, really, of Betfair. But I believe the Securities Commission closed it down.
Yeah, and it is difficult for people outside the U.S. to get a bank account here now. It's crazy what you have to go through, but that's another story. Maybe you can take bets on when the New World Order is going to lock the whole planet down, but that'll be another show. So, Paul, let's see here. How do we start? Political gambling for the U.S. elections. How long has that been going on in England on a wide scale?
Really, as long as betting has been legal, which is like 50 years. But in particular, it's really ramped up this century with the internet. Right. So Betfair.com, for instance, was started in 2001, and there were numerous betting sites that really kind of grew in the late 1990s, early part of the century. And it's a huge industry on there. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. This election will be the biggest of all time. And
until next one, maybe.
$billion traded.
So now the bookies monitor the situation and change the odds. Is that how it works?
Well, that's how the bookies would work. As I say, Betfair.com, that is a peer-to-peer exchange, kind of like eBay. And this is literally individual traders like me buying or selling a candidate. I mean, I would have taken on most of the candidates in both races. I would have been on both sides of it. Maybe, for example, just in the last week, for instance, I was the punter backing Marco Rubio when he was rated 12% for the presidency before Iowa. And then after Iowa, I became the bookie, and I sold my position on Rublo because the odds had moved in my favour.
Interesting. Now, I'm not so much interested in the making of the money or the losing of the money. I'm more interested in the research that goes into it. I guess how does it work? Do the bookies all do their own research, or are there? Do they read the newspapers? Are there people who do research for them, or are some of them just stupid and they sort of follow the pack? How does a typical person do that?
Well, you have. I think the bookies, as I say, there is a distinction between the bookies and the Betfair, the exchanges. I mean, the bookies would have probably one or two individuals making the odds based on their own analysis, and most likely as well following the market, because if they have to be relatively uniform in their odds. Otherwise, there'd be an arbitrage opportunity between markets. Personally, I do my own analysis, and I've got my site, politicalgambler.com. And every day, pretty much on that site, I write deep analysis of the race. I talk about it will be based on several years of research. I mean, I'm really into my politics. I got a degree in the subject 15 years ago, and I've been my analysis and overview of this year's election is an 8-year story, really. And it's being updated every day is based on a combination of sort of in-depth political knowledge, historical trends, opinion polls are obviously part of it, the likely trajectory of the race, all of those things combined.
So, and how long have you been doing this kind of work, being a bookie? And for that matter, a punter, I suppose.
Yeah, so I've been a professional gambler for 15 years. 13 years. I was semi-professional for probably 25. I was gambling when I was a child, really, and shouldn't have been, but I was. And then as soon as I was old enough, I went to work for bookmakers. And then, coincidentally, I got a politics degree because I was interested in politics. And then I realised in my mid-20s that there was this opportunity to merge my two skills of gambling knowledge and political knowledge.
So then the age-old question, are you ahead or behind, or have you broken even?
Oh, yeah, I consistently made a living for 13 years. It's my main job. I mean, I'm also a journalist. I write for Betfair.com, I write for Politico. I'm doing a weekly column for Politico throughout 2016. But, yeah, my primary income is gambling, always has been, and I've never had a bad year. I've always made money out.
All right, very good. So then, lucky you. Now, you're here in the U.S. covering the elections for this purpose. Is that correct?
That's right, exactly. I'm travelling. I came in November. I have been home for Christmas, and I will be living home on occasion for family business. But basically, the year, November to November, I'm travelling through as many states as I can. So I'm in New Hampshire at the moment. I was in Iowa last week. The next place I'll be visiting is Nevada, and then I'm not sure, that's Super Tuesday, probably south, probably Texas, onto Ohio, and then we'll see where the race takes us. And I'm writing a book as I go along, and as I say, writing updates in my blog today, which is politicalgambler.com. Doing a lot of stuff on Twitter.
Right. So we're going to take a break. We're speaking with professional gambler and bookmaker Paul Krishnamurti. We're talking about the odds on the election here in the U.S.
Easy.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Now, this is a very interesting interview that we're having with Paul Krishnamurti. He is a professional bookie and gambler from the United Kingdom. As you heard, he's been doing it much of his adult life, or all of his adult life. And we have him on the show because he's here in the U.S. for a full year, and he'll be covering the presidential elections, which apparently is a fairly large market for gambling in the UK. How big is the betting when it comes to the United States elections? And by the way, is this just for the president, or are they also betting on other things?
It's the whole thing. No, it's the whole thing, and it's huge. It will be the biggest political betting event of all time, I'm certain. There are markets on both nominees. There's markets on every single primary. There's even a market on who comes second tonight in the Republican race anyway. There'll be markets on every state when the general election comes around, and the distribution of votes in the electoral college and the vice presidential candidates. Absolutely everything.
No, but what I mean, senators and Congress people too, governors. How does that go?
No, No, there is a bit of betting on the Senate, on the overall control of the Senate, but that's not particularly popular or sort of newsworthy in England. But the presidential election is a huge news event in Britain, so therefore it's really important. I mean, if you take Iowa and New Hampshire, there's British journalists by the dozen in both places. Has been. I've bumped into loads of them already. It's really big news, especially this year because of the Donald Trump and the Bernie Sanders factor.
Which is, by the way, very similar. It's a manifestation. I was just speaking about this before you came on. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are manifestations of the same voter anger that produced Jeremy Corbyn in your country.
Exactly.
And Podemos in Spain and Syriza in Greece and the rise of Marine Le Pen in France and even the independence vote in Scotland, for instance. So do you guys cover that sort of thing?
I 100% agree. I've written analysis on that very subject. I won a lot of money out of Jeremy Corbyn. I predicted Jeremy Corbyn literally 5 minutes after he declared for the contest. And he was not taken seriously at all for weeks. The media just ignored it. But it was so obvious to me that was going to happen. And likewise, as you say, it's an international phenomenon. In fact, I wrote a piece, I think, on New Year's Eve on my site, politicalgambler.com, which was basically showing what Donald Trump and Jeremy Corbyn had in common. Because I think if you ask Jeremy Corbyn supporter what they think of Donald Trump, they would say that, he's awful. If you ask Donald Trump supporter what they think of Jeremy Corbyn, if they knew Jeremy Corbyn was, they would be appalled. Yet there's a very deep common ground, and it's to do with anger and alienation from the political process. And also, I think the other key factor is the diversification of media, where the mainstream media, big media, don't have much control anymore, and people can kind of tailor their politics to suit their own particular interests, and it can create a bit of a bubble, if you like.
Yeah, I call it the reality shift that they sell to the public in order for the rat bastards at the top to steal everything from everybody. And, in your country, you've got Oxfam, the famous group who just recently came out with a report that said 62 people in the world own half of the world's wealth. Well, that's how they do it. They own the media and they misdirect everybody. And, while everybody's going the wrong way, they're robbing them blind. But that's what I think. Maybe you could write about that sometime. Of all the things you mentioned that Donald Trump and Jeremy Corbyn have in common, I failed to hear you say the number one thing that they have in common. Do you know what that is?
Don't.
That the political establishment in the United States, right and left, and the political establishment in Great Britain, right and left, are in absolute 100% agreement on these two people. They want to destroy them at any cost. How about that?
I'm not so sure about that, actually. I understand what you're saying, but certainly in the case of Donald Trump, from what I hear, there's a lot of leading Republicans in Congress who are now sympathetic and going, we can do business with him. They'd much rather him than Ted Cruz, for instance. You saw this a couple of weeks ago when all of the Ted Cruz was just coming under fire from everybody in Iowa. People like Giuliani, people like the governor of Iowa, Joe Branstad, they were saying, no, if we have to have him outside, we'd much rather have Trump, because they know they can do business with him. I
think they'd much rather have Jeb Bush, but they can't, and for good reason.
Of course. They're pinning a lot. Donald Trump, I would say, is hardly an outsider.
He's obviously more of an outsider than some. And, I don't know, Bernie Sanders, for that matter, is not quite an outsider either. I don't know, was Jeremy Corbyn an outsider? I put Corbyn in. Sanders and Corbyn, as I'd have said, are very similar. They're both left-wing politicians who've never represented a constituency that is really electable nationally. And they probably still are in that position. But given the sort of shift of thought on the left, they've become electors to both sides. But if you take Jeremy Corbyn may have won the Labour leadership contest. He's not going to win the general election. He's not going to. The result of Jeremy Corbyn is probably to make the Labour Party much less electable. I don't know that it makes much difference, because he's sort of getting all the wars and everything, no matter what, and all the austerity and all that, and all the mismanagement.
Maybe so. But if you're a Labour politician or a Labour Party member or whatever, right, you would probably have, that you want to get elected, you want to win the general election. But I think that whereas a more mainstream Labour Party leader would have have a chance. I don't think Corbyn has. I think Corbyn...
Right, but you know what? This time around, you're the analyst, you're the political guy. You tell me, if Corbyn gets smacked down, if Trump gets smacked down, if Sanders gets smacked down, do you think the anger is going to go away, or do you think it's going to get bigger? And they'll just put somebody up with more force next time? What do you think?
Well, my instinct is... when you say this, it might end up a race between Trump and Sanders. If it was Trump and Sanders, right? Let's say it was Trump and Sanders were the two candidates, or Cruz and Sanders. Personally, I regard Cruz as much more of an outsider than Trump. You know, Cruz is someone who Washington hates because they've seen his actions, which is to try and tear down Washington. That can't be said of Trump. But if it's either of them, Michael Bloomberg will run. Okay? Now, if Michael Bloomberg runs, then you've got a three-way contest and anything's up for grabs. I don't think the anger's going to go away, but I think that people are going to... I think that politics, in general, has to come up with solutions, and just anger isn't enough. You know, Donald Trump doesn't really have any policies that I can see that are workable. He just says things. And Bernie Sanders seems to be saying, well, okay, we'll just copy the sort of European welfare model, right? Which, you know, maybe some of it's plausible, but a lot of those European countries are abandoning it because it's not plausible in a world where the movement of money and people is almost beyond state control.
Maybe I can become a consultant for you in your business, because none of the other ones have any workable things either. What they have is a bill of goods that they sell to everybody about how they're going to improve things, and what actually happens is things continue to get worse and worse because they're not working for the people anymore. I'm sure you are an astute guy. This is your business, but you did see the report that came out about a year and a half ago with the Princeton and the Northwestern University professors. The BBC ran an article on it that statistically it cannot be denied any longer. The United States is officially running as an oligarchy now, not as a democratic republic. Mm-hmm. Right.
I certainly understand the logic. I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you that the politicians, the mainstream ones, aren't delivering either. But that's the problem. I think that people expect their government or expect their politicians to have answers to solutions. But they don't. They don't have them anymore. There aren't any easy answers. And so there is this anger at that inability to provide the answers and solutions, but choosing some outsider guys who are just saying populist things, that isn't necessarily an answer either. And I think the anger will carry on, like you say. I completely agree. I don't know where it goes.
Well, I think it goes to a showdown, and we're going to find out, you know, if the iron fist is going to come out of the velvet glove or not. I mean, it's either going to be the people are going to find out it's too late and they have no say anymore, and they're not going to have a say anymore, or, you know, a group of people, individuals, or a group is going to rise to the occasion and say, hey, enough is enough, and we're going to go back and craft a political solution to get everybody back to work and get everything working again. I think it's got to be one or the other, and I think it's a foot race. We'll see what happens. You know, your country has more seats.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
I think that the anger will carry on. I think that may be that there will be some kind of popular movement, some sort of popular uprising. But I would also say that I don't see, in all of those countries that we talked about before, where there are outsiders coming through, in Spain and in Greece and the Scottish referendum. I mean, so we mentioned the Scottish referendum. The SNP are now in charge of Scotland. But if you actually, you know, believe me, I follow UK politics, great. This Scottish National Party are a bunch of jokers. They just say the things they say and mean as they've governed Scotland for like 4 or 5 years.
I mean, the same has been said about people like Trump. You know, they called that to Trump, they call that to Corbyn. But I think the people right now are so upset that they're going to take anybody, and if they don't do the job, then they'll find somebody else. And sooner or later, somebody's going to realize, hey, there's an opportunity here, and we're going to get more serious people approaching. In any case, if they're smart, the oligarchy is going to have to tune their approach and start giving a little bit back to the people. Otherwise, they're going to have a big problem on their hands, I think.
I think that you're right. Their popular uprising is very plausible and all of that. All I'm saying is that whether there are no answers, like when I say the Scottish National Party are jokers, I think they're very serious people who want to do the right thing. For 5 years in Scotland. And I would struggle to find anything that actually achieved.
Well, listen, Paul, hold on one second, because we're about out of time for this segment. We'll be right back with Paul Krishnamurti. We're talking about politics and gambling on politics, and it turns into political analysis as well. We'll be right back just after this.
Here's to you, my love, with
Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. Very interesting discussion we're having with first-time guest on the program, Paul Krishnamurti. Paul is from Great Britain. He's here for a year in the United States. I think he'll be probably going back on, to visit his family from time to time. He was back over the holidays, but he's here to cover the 2016 presidential elections here for the gambling public in the UK, where there's a great deal of interest betting-wise on what happens here in the presidential races. Listen, Paul, we could talk for hours. Obviously, you're a keen political analyst. I suppose you have to be if you're putting your money up to get those outcomes. But there are a couple of things I wanted to get to, and maybe you may have some more points before we run out of time on our last segment. First of all, what exactly are people betting on? Are they betting on the person who's actually going to win the election, or are they betting on the person who's going to end up with the office, whether they won it or not? And the reason I ask that is because the 2000 election for president here in this country was flat out stolen. Okay, so if I made a bet in that election on Al Gore, I would be very upset to read in the New York Times, as was printed in, November, I believe it was, of 2001, that if all the votes in Florida had in fact been counted by the law legally, then it would have been Al Gore who would have won the state and thereby the election. How is that sort of thing handled? How was that handled?
That was the bookmakers would play on the official result. Each bookmaker would have their rules and regulations laid out, and they may differ from firm to firm, but the general ruling would be the official result as declared by, in this case, I would gather the Supreme Court.
So it's not necessarily the person who actually won the election, but it's the one who's coronated as having been the winner, by hook or by crook.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, in the end, the people who want to bet on it want to have their bet settled on time, quickly. They've tied up money, they've invested in this market, and they need a relatively quick decision. And so they'll go with the official announcement. And I mean, the same thing could apply in sports, in other markets. They bet on some places they bet on in the UK, like which song will be number one at Christmas. You have to have a set of rules, though. Put no set of rules down, and it will be the official announcement.
Yeah, no, I'm not making a value judgment whatsoever. I'm just saying how the heck that. So it's kind of like an umpire in baseball. The decision is more important than whether it's always accurate or not. It's making a decision, letting the game go forward is what counts. So you could have bet on the winner and still lost your money if the powers that be wanted to do what they did, for instance, in 2000 and steal the election.
Yeah, I'd imagine in 2000, people who backed Al Gore would be very angry about what happened, but the rules are the rules, and that's they have. So
is there a market for people to bet on whether or not the election will be stolen or not? That would be a good market, huh? You would have made out okay then.
No.
If
you would. No, there wasn't such a market. No.
Well, there ought to be, because with electronic voting now, it's really it's a danger to your business, frankly, because. This stuff is, there's literally, I don't know if you're familiar with that. We could talk offline, but there are literally people who have been killed or who have died funny, as we say here in Brooklyn, small plane accidents and whatnot, who have been involved in this vote counting and, where votes in Ohio, for instance, were sent to electronically online, were sent to Kentucky for analysis before the vote could be declared, all this kind of crazy stuff. It's a long history of cheating in elections. I'm sure you've got it in the United Kingdom as well. But I would wonder how that factors into this thing. But I guess everyone's in agreement that, it's not who wins, it's who's declared the winner.
Yeah, you should remember that the people who are gambling largely don't have a political stake. We might all have views about politics because we're obviously interested in the subject, but when you gamble, you can't afford to have that. If you're gambling seriously, you can't afford to let your politics get in the way. You've got that. My mortgage depends. My ability to pay the mortgage, my ability to eat depends on me getting the markets right. Yeah, so I can't get involved in the whole value judgment thing.
So let me ask you also. I'm sorry. I started off the program by saying that, it was my belief that there is a certain sort of insight that happens when a large population puts their money up. Tell me about it. Or how good or correct in the end do the odds on U.S. presidential political gambling in the United States end up being on the historical average in England?
Incredibly so. So we have to distinguish. When it comes to general elections or main national elections, so that would apply in the UK or the USA, or the Scottish referendum, or like the London mayor, something where the general population are voting. The market on Betfair, which is a purely supply and demand situation, 100 days out has never been wrong. The favourite has won every single one of them since the exchange was started 15 years ago. However, if we're talking primaries or leadership contests, very different because the people voting in those contests are party members, party activists, and they're not reflective. And
exactly. They're not the general public. They're the hardcore people in those elections. Right.
That's right. It's harder to predict. Hence why, if you say Jeremy Corbyn, when I bet Jeremy Corbyn, he was the outsider. He was given only a 4% chance of winning.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And Ted Cruz, I bet Ted Cruz heavily, and he was an outsider. Sanders was an outsider. And the reason why they have been, the reason people didn't pick up on them is who the media say. Yeah? And they're not necessarily right in those smaller contests. But in a national election, I think that the market has a very good way of judging the median opinion of the country.
So it's a little too early to tell. What you're saying is once you hit the 100-day mark, it's usually pretty good after that.
Yeah.
So I'll have to follow you. I'll have to go to your site and find out who you guys picked at 100 days out and see how it goes. It's obviously a long way to go yet. A lot can happen. We're only just getting started. But it must be, so far this year, it must be a little bit difficult because it is such a quirky year with all these, there's, 17 people or whatever it is that started out on the Republican side and all these outsiders. The public is angry. Would you agree that this is a little bit challenging for all y'all this time around?
It's different. On a personal, so we have to distinguish. There's the market, which is not me, that's just supply and demand, right? And there's me. I'm an individual analyst. Personally, I prefer it like this because there's more angles. As I say, something like Ted Cruz, in the UK, a number of people had heard of Ted Cruz 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and I was betting on minuscule, right? They knew Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, that's probably it. Whereas I know all these other left candidates because I'm into my politics. But certainly, with regards to the main contest, it's more about the general consensus. And a good example, last time around, in 2012, Obama was favourite. Obama was rated above 50% likely for 1,000 days beforehand. He never moved. The market always moved in his direction. It was nothing new. And when media on the night was saying it's all too close to call, and it's like, we didn't pick anyone, and all these pundits were refusing to put their head on the blocks. The market was saying 85%, 90% Obama.
Listen, gambling is a particular subject, and there's a spectrum, I imagine, of people who participate in it. On the economic side of things, I'm sure there's people who, have so much money that if they win or lose a great deal or even a little bit, it really doesn't impact them greatly. On the other side of that spectrum, I'm sure there's people who can be impacted greatly by their gambling winnings and losses. And so, too, I imagine that as far as the desire to participate spectrum goes, there are some people who could enjoy it, take it or leave it, pick it up and do it and drop it for years if they wanted to, whereas on the other side of that spectrum, there are people who can't put it down. How do you deal with that, if I may ask? Obviously, you had to have run into all these different types of people. What happens when you run into somebody who's bet and lost money that they can't afford to lose? They've got a family or something like that. How does that impact the bookie, if I may ask? And if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
I'm not a bookie. I'm a gambler, right? But the market, as it now stands, doesn't make a distinction. The market now allows you to be both because it's a stock market. It's like a peer-to-peer thing. It's no different from being a buyer or a seller on eBay. You can be just as you could buy or sell a PC on.
Right, but on the other side of that bet that you're covering, if you are the bookie, there's a person, and do you know these people personally? I imagine some of your clients you must know person.
Well, the trading's all anonymous. Right? Okay. It's an anonymous thing, just you don't have any personal thing. Personally, most of my friends and my background, comes from the gambling world, so I've seen all sides of this.
Right.
And, I think what you said before is right. I think there's different types, and I think that if you just simplistic analysis would be if 100% of people who gamble, I'd have said 95%, 96%, just take it or leave it, do it for a bit of fun. 3%, 3.5% have a problem of differing degrees, right? And some of them go out of it, some people don't, some people ruin themselves. And then there's a small number, 0.5 or less percent, who are good at it, who take it seriously, who make money out of it.
Right.
And, I've got to say, personally, I've been all sides of this. A lot of my friends are involved in this at all sorts of levels. I think they would all agree as well, the ones who've been on the wrong side of it. No individual choice, freedom.
Right. So listen, we only have about a minute left. So what you're saying is that right now with technology, I guess it's done on credit cards or whatever. It's done. No, there's no threat of you losing anything. Do you have to? I guess you have to put a certain amount up somewhere and it's locked in or something like that. Is that how it goes, or is there any danger of somebody not paying up?
Yes. There is. There depends who you bet with. I mean, yeah, some bookies have been unreliable like that, but the bigger ones, they've got various safeguards in place for where the money is sitting, and it's not a problem. And I'm happy to have my money tied up, a certain amount of my money tied up with them. It really depends on the size of the bookie, the size of the market. Personally, if there was a small exchange opened up tomorrow, I wouldn't put any money in there. I wouldn't trust it. Yeah, but the big ones like Betfair, not a problem at all.
Well, listen, Paul, it's been very, very interesting. Friends, we've been speaking with Paul Krishnamurti. I know that you've got a website, politicalgambler.com, and that you write, there's videos and so forth. Is that the best place to go for if people are interested in finding out more about you?
Absolutely, yeah. I update that virtually every day. There's analysis daily on this race and on big developments in UK politics, and I hope you'll call me this interview, got out there, all my media stuff's on there.
All right, that's all the time we have for Paul. We're going to be right back.
Now.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. We're going to switch gears now. We were talking about the U.S. presidential elections. In fact, right now in New Hampshire, I suppose, they're counting up the votes. It'll be very interesting. Donald Trump is expected to win on the Republican side, Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. But when it comes to sorting out other matters in the world, some of them political, some of them ethical, and that sort of thing, we have lots of different people that we go to, and I'm very happy to bring to you tonight Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. He's not been on the show for a bit. He's been traveling. He just got back from Israel, and Rabbi Shapiro is very distinguished. He's an ultra-Orthodox rabbi. If I was Jewish, I would ask him to be my rabbi, and he's a particular expert on the history of Zionism. He's a fellow New Yorker here in Bayside, Queens. Rabbi, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the kind words. But I could still be a rabbi even if you're not Jewish.
Well, yes, of course you are when it comes to certain matters. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but I mean,
like universal religion,
But I mean, if I really wanted to make progress in that particular lineage, I'd come and ask you about it first, I think.
And I would accommodate you first before anybody else.
Okay. So Mutual Admiration Society in full swing. Now, it's been a bit. I know that some of the students that you work with, Rabbi, since we spoke last, have put up a Facebook page to help people sort out what Zionism was all about, and I'd like to talk with you about that. I know that you were just in Israel. Maybe you can give us an update on how things are over there and the general state of affairs between what I consider to be the true essence of the Jews, Judaism, versus this interloper Zionism that's causing so much trouble.
Absolutely. I just got back from Israel. What's today? Today's Tuesday. I got back from Israel Sunday morning. And it's a funny thing. The people in America know what's going on in Israel more than the people in Israel do. I have a son who's in a yeshiva over there. He's in school. And every time I hear in the headlines about somebody gets stabbed or something over there, so the first thing, parental instinct, I call him up to find out if he's okay. He has no idea what's going on. We hear the news here before they do over there.
Boy, you're such a Jewish mother,
Well, listen, I would hope that everybody would have that amount of Jewishness in them at least. Look, if you don't care about your kids, who then do you care about?
No, that's what we need to care about. Go ahead.
That's right. So the action, the drama that's taking place in Israel is basically limited to the border territories, the border areas, or the settlements. But in the heart of Jerusalem, where my son is, you don't hear anything. In most of the places, 99% of the areas is like quiet. And especially where my son is, that's where I stayed in that area. It's an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and they really living in their own world in the sense that they don't really look at themselves as part of the whole Israeli society. In fact, the ultra-Orthodox were there before the Zionists were there. The community of the ultra-Orthodox community.
And yeah, that goes back a ways, I guess. Very interesting.
Yeah, I met a taxi driver.
That whole history that there's been Jews in the Holy Land forever, and a lot of them left, a lot of them stayed, and they got along well, as far as I hear, with the Palestinians, the indigenous population. Is that true?
Of course. First of all, they were part of the indigenous population. I met a taxi driver. A guy took me to the airport when I left. His family was in Israel, Palestine. It was in Israel then 500 years. After the expulsion of 1492 from Spain, they moved to Israel, and his family's still there. You know, they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and of course they got along. Why shouldn't they get along? There is no problem between Jews and Muslims. This is a political thing, the same way that the Indians had a problem with the British when they came to colonize the United States. We all learned about that in elementary school. So the indigenous population has a problem with the Zionists. And they're really imposter Jews. They're not real Jews. They don't even believe in the Jewish religion, and Judaism is a religion. That's all it is. And they have the same problem with them. And they have a bigger problem with the Orthodox Jews than they do with the Palestinians. They do. The reason is because the Orthodox Jews, basically, we're the remnants of what the old Jewish identity was, and they don't like that. The essence of Zionism, and it's important for people to know this, is to change the definition of a Jew from practitioner of religion to some kind of nationality or ethnicity. It used to be, let's say, 200 years ago, before any Zionist came onto the scene, that every Jew understood that you're either a practitioner of the Jewish religion or there's no reason for you to consider yourself Jewish. And there was no such thing as a critical mass of people that did not practice the Jewish religion that consider themselves Jews. That started, actually, with the anti-Semites. They wanted to make the Jews into some kind of ethnicity in order to degrade the religion. Some kind of nation or tribal thing in order to degrade the religion. The Zionists agreed with the anti-Semites about that. Not that they had a choice. The Orthodox Jews rejected them because they were against the religion, and the Gentiles rejected them because they didn't like them as Jews. So they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. So they invented their own identity. A Jew, quote unquote, a national Jew, an ethnic Jew, a tribal Jew. That's a Zionist invention. No such thing. So we still remember that. We still tell people that, and we still represent that. So they don't like us. They like us less than they like the Palestinians. Which is fine by me.
Yeah, it's a badge of honor if you ask me. And I think they probably have a problem with me too. But I've read, I've researched on the subject, and I understand, that the ultra-Orthodox that were living in Palestine before it became Israel, got along well with their Palestinian neighbors. I hear stories of, children being raised together, when, like in any neighborhood where people live together, in the old days anyway, here in Brooklyn, sure, where the mothers would look out for each other's children and that sort of thing. And that the Zionists came in and messed all of that stuff up, like at the Dar Yassin massacre, for instance.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I would recommend, if you want a good book on this topic, and it's a very small book by a woman, Amy Doxer Marcus, 1913, I believe it's called. She named that book that because she believes that that's the watershed, 1913, where things got bad between the Jewish people and the Palestinians. But the Jews and the Arabs, the Palestinians, they got along very, very well. You should look up, Google the name Jacob Dahan, Dehaan. He was originally from Holland, and he later came to live in Israel, Palestine. There was no Israel then. And the Yishuv, the Jewish community there, sent him to the King of Jordan, and the British, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, sent him to those places to tell them that these countries should not think that the Jews have any interest in any nationalistic movement. They have no interest in taking over the country, and it's all the Zionists, and they would love to live the way they are. Then it was the Ottoman rule or the British rule, depending upon what year it was. But guess what happened to this man, Jacob Dahan? As he was coming out of afternoon prayers, the Zionists assassinated him.
Yeah.
And they admitted it.
Yeah.
They said because he put Zionism in danger. Should I tell you what the big elephant in the room is with Zionism? The big lie?
Please, that's why we have you on the show.
Okay, listen to me. Here's the thing. An American is an American because the colonists created the United States of America, right? And the only Americans were the people who were living in the colonies, right? The same thing happened in Italy and Britain. That's the way countries are made. Israel claims to be different than all other countries, but they don't want anybody to know this. You see, they claim to be the national, the liberation movement of the Jewish people, but it's not. The people, the Zionists that colonized and took over Israel, okay, so it's their country, or they claim it's their country, but they claim that it's the country, they represent all the Jews all over the world. That's
which of course they don't, but that's good for their PR. Well, no, I'm sorry, Yaakov, we got a commercial, so we will listen to you right as soon as we get back. Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro will be right back just after this.
What do you do when a bird with a broken wing waddles into your oven and refuses to leave? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with a tale of how one Austrian couple faced exactly that dilemma. Next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Here's a love story from Austria that involves a taxidermist named Bertel Reiterer, his wife Ermi, and a pigeon named Susie. It started the day Bertel found Susie with a broken wing by the side of the road. He took her to a vet, then home, then set the bird up in the garage. But on Christmas Day, Susie waddled into the kitchen, hopped into the oven, and refused to come out. Rather than make pigeon stew, the couple adopted Susie and allowed the flightless bird to make a home in their oven. That was 17 years ago. Sure, it makes cooking tricky, they say, but their kitchen is all the warmer for it. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Something's wrong! Man, I swear something's wrong. Something's wrong! I don't think I'll be around here long.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley here. INN World Report Radio every Tuesday and Thursday nights here on the great Logos Radio Network. And as always, very fascinating. We're speaking with a very learned man, Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, here in New York City. Bayside, Queens is where his shul is. And we go to Rabbi Shapiro to really get a healthy perspective, not the propaganda perspective that you'll get in the news or by your politicians or by certain of your church people, but from somebody who really knows the difference about the difference between Judaism and Zionism. Rabbi, before the break, we were talking, and I know you told me over the break you said something about Zionism and where it's going to go and how maybe people can work toward curtailing it.
Right. There's a big secret, as I was saying, that the Zionists don't want people to notice. They can't keep it a secret, but they don't want people to notice it. And that is, the Zionists claim that Israel's the state of the Jewish people. But how in the world could a population in the Middle East be the state of people in the United States and Britain and Belgium? When they created Israel, they created it in the name of all the Jewish people, but nobody made them our spokespeople. It was a big lie. They wanted to do that for two reasons. First of all, because they needed like an excuse to be there. Because like, who are you? You know, so they said we have a heritage, the biblical thing, and everything like that. These guys didn't even believe in the Bible. They hated the Bible. Ben Gurion said we got to make a new Bible. They didn't even believe in it. But the second thing also, they wanted to play into the Christian Protestant, even today it's the evangelical idea that the Jews are going to come back to the Holy Land and then convert to Christianity, which started in the late 1500s and it's the 1600s. The Jews never had such an idea that God promised them the land. No, God gave them the land when Joshua went into it, and then God said, I'm kicking you out, and now we're in exile. The idea that the Palestine is the birthright of the Jewish people is a Christian idea, a Protestant idea. If my memory serves, Francis Kett was the name of the first guy on record to come up with that idea. And by the way, he was burned at the stake for doing so, for thinking and for preaching that. Francis Kett, if my memory serves, 1585 was the year they burned him. But the Britain was very Protestant, and the Zionists wanted to play into their beliefs. And there was a big Zionist Christian movement in Britain, particularly before the Zionists came. So they invented this whole thing that we represent the Jewish people and this is the Jewish state. But logically, it makes no sense. You could create a country and you're the colonists, and now the colonists are Americans. But how in the world would a country that, let's say, the colonists made represents people across the sea, 6,000 miles away? They falsely, unilaterally claim to represent the Jewish people. They don't. And that is the secret, really. That is the thing that everybody can do. Everybody listening to this show can do to offset and negate and counter Zionism. Zionism They continuously claim we have some kind of historical right to this land. We have some kind of biblical right to this land. God gave us this land.
It keeps changing, right? Then it became the Holocaust. You owe us this land because of the Holocaust.
Right. Forget about the Holocaust for now, because they are still claiming about God giving them the land. Tzipi Chotavelli said it openly that that's what the Zionists should tell everybody. Biblical land, heritage, forefathers, historical right. I'm sticking to that for now. Everybody should tell the Zionists, you are not the Jews. You are imposters. You don't represent the Jewish people.
Well, not only that, but they don't believe in God either. And here they are saying a guy they don't believe in gave them the land.
No, that's true. But in terms of historical rights and all of these things, they are not representative of the Jewish people. But the Jewish people live in America. We live in England. They live in Israel. They live all over the world. The Zionists do not represent the Jewish people. And if everybody in the world would tell that to the Zionists, there wouldn't be any Zionism anymore. Because Zionism is based on the illusion, on the mirage, that they somehow are the embodiment of the ancient Jewish people. They keep saying that in various different ways. If this facade would be exposed for the fraud that it is, Zionism would fall apart. But the problem is that people look at the Zionists as representative of the Jewish people, and therefore, number one, people are reluctant to criticize Zionism because they are afraid of being accused of being anti-Semites. What you guys need to do is to stop defending yourself. Oh, I'm not an anti-Semite, and you're not, but you don't need to keep saying that. You see, they want to shift the burden onto you to defend yourself against being an anti-Semite. You don't need to do that. If the discourse is just defending Tom Kiley and all the people in Austin, Texas, from being anti-Semites, Zionism never comes up on the agenda. It's just you guys on the defensive. What people should do is people should go to the Zionists and say, if people don't like you, that doesn't make us anti-Semites. You're not the Jewish people. You're frauds. Judaism is a religion. What do you have to do with the Jewish people? If everybody would say that, Zionism would fall apart.
I say it all the time, and you've heard me say it, that it is the one thing that the actual anti-Semites and the Zionists agree on. They both want to baloney you into thinking that there is no difference between Zionism and isn't that incredible? The haters of the Jewish people and the interlopers who are not religious whatsoever, who claim to be the representatives of the Jewish people, the two of them agree on the same thing. One, because they want you to hate all the Jews. They don't want you to make a distinction between the Zionists and the religious Jews, such as yourself, or the innocent Jews, as Gilad Atzmon calls them. And the other sons of bees want to get you to think conflated, because they want you to feel like if you criticize Zionism, you're an anti-Semite and you're criticizing the Jews.
Right. But it's not even a question of innocent Jews versus guilty Jews. That itself is wrong. Because what I mean, by doing that, you're putting Jews and Zionists in the same group. These are innocent, these are guilty. Like in Germans, there were some Nazis, they're guilty, and there were innocent Germans. No, we're not even the same group. We're not the same population. We're not that we're the innocent Jews and they're guilty Jews. Why is the fact that I'm a Jew?
There's the real Jews and the imposters.
They're Zionists. They have nothing to do with Judaism. Nothing to do with Jewishness. Yeah. You know what? Look, in Christianity, there's a supersessionist movement amongst the Christians. They say they're the real Jews. So tell me, why don't you say that they're the Christian Jews and we're the non-Christian Jews? Well, no. If they're the Jews, we're not the Jews. If we're the Jews, they're not the Jews. I got that. Same thing with Zionists. Putting us together with the Zionists and we're the innocent Jews, that itself is wrong. The Zionism was a supersessionist movement.
Yeah, I think what Galat means by that are Jewish people who are not Zionists whatsoever.
But it's not even a question of Jewish people who are Zionists. There are more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jewish Zionists, right? The evangelicals.
Well, are you saying therefore that you cannot be both? I'm
saying that you could be a Met fan and you could be a Zionist too. But you wouldn't say the innocent Met fans and the guilty Met fans, the Zionist Met fans and the non-Zionist Met fans.
No, that's not my question. My question is, can you be both, an observant Jew and Zionist?
Listen, you could be a Jew and you can eat pork also. That doesn't make it right. But there's no such thing as Zionism is not related to Judaism. So it's just like a person would not say the Zionist Met fans and the not Zionist Met fans, because those two adjectives, those two descriptions, Met fan and Zionist, have nothing to do with each other. So why would you make them a subset? Why would you make one a subset?
Well, actually, because frankly, Rabbi, a lot of people who identify as Jews seem to be very confused on this subject too, and by design.
A lot of people, yes, and a lot of people who identify as women seem to be confused also. But you need, just because somebody identifies as something doesn't make them that. Right. So they can identify as a Jew, but we have a different definition of Jew. Right. Putting us together with the Zionists is offensive to me. I'm just like saying, well, they're Jews. There's a whole group, Jews for Jesus, right? So there's Jesus Jews who believe in Jesus and Jews who don't know. It's two completely different religions.
Hold on one second. Did you have any more time we have one more segment, but I know you only had about a half hour tonight. Is that it?
I got a couple more minutes, really.
All right, good.
Because I'm your rabbi, you know.
You're my rabbi. I've said it, and I'll say it again. Okay, back.
Easy.
Good friends, welcome back. You know, it's a thicket, and we're sorting it out, and I found Rabbi Shapiro is an excellent source to do that. Rabbi, you know what's going to happen? This is our last segment. We're going to have a great time talking, and we're going to run out of time. Why don't you take a breather for a second, and let's tell everyone where they can go to see this incredible Facebook page now that these students have put up.
Yeah, sure. My students put up a Facebook page. It's a little complicated because the name is mostly Hebrew. Havana, not Hasbara. Havana, that's Havana. Just punch up over here. It is Havana, Havana, as in, Cuba. Not N-O-T. Third word, Hasbara, Hasbara. What it means is the Zionists actually have a government-sponsored propaganda organization.
Hasbara.
Hasbara, right. Or Hasbara. Hasbara means explanation. That's what the word means. And they train people to explain propaganda that try to convince people to be pro-Israel. Havana means understanding. It means to understand, not just to talk and to convince people. It means to understand. So we counter Hasbara. That's the site. Hasbara, not Havana, not Hasbara, Jewish identity. And the guys over there all about, also friends of mine put up TrueTorahJews.org.
Hello? Check 1 2. Oh, okay. I think that we lost our connection with Rabbi Shapiro. We'll be connecting back with him in a moment. But as you can hear, he's very passionate about this. And thank goodness that people are, because enough is enough. And unfortunately, there's gobs of money on the Zionist side to counteract, as he was saying, with Hasbara, which is there is, I believe, an Israeli government agency. It's a propaganda ministry. And Hasbara, you may have heard the term, is that effort to confuse people. And from what I can tell, it's a very in-depth one. And let's see. Hold on one second. I think we're back. Okay, we don't have him back on yet. So I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully we can reestablish connection with him. But anyway, that's the story. How's it going in the meantime? While we're waiting to reconnect, Sanders and Trump are projected to win in New Hampshire. And that's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out. Maybe. Oh, here we go. I think is Rabbi back on the line with us, Deb?
Yeah, I'm back on the line. What was the last thing I said before?
Well, the Hasbara agents didn't want you to come through and talk with us. You were talking about this.
Joke. I'm sure. They got me. They're hacking into my computer here. Havana, Havana, not Hasbara. Right. Hasbara. Also, you can check out a website of other friends of mine called TrueTorahJews.org.
Right. That's how I found you, by the way.
Right. There are, you see, it's very simple. To the Zionists, Jewishness is a tribal thing. There's a tribe. We're not a tribe. We're a religion. It's as simple as that. The Zionists changed that. The existence of Israel is an attack on my religion because it reduces Jewishness to some kind of ethnicity, tribal nationality, which it is not. They don't believe in the religion. And Theodore Herzl on page 7 of his diary said that he would
Herzl, one of the founders of Zionism.
Yes, he was probably the founder of Zionism. He's considered the father of Zionism. He wanted to convert all Jews to Christianity. But that was not realistic. So instead, he's going to destroy Jewishness, which was their goal of the Zionists, by changing Jewishness from a religion into a nationality. They wanted to be non-Jews, but the non-Jewish people would not let them. In particular, in Russia in 1881, when they tried to assimilate, when the Zionists then, pre-Zionists, tried to assimilate, they ended up, the Russians responded with the pogroms of 1881. So they didn't know what to do.
Let me ask you something, Rabbi. Yes. These pogroms didn't just happen out of nowhere. There was a trigger for them that secular people who identified as Jews stimulated. Is that a fair thing?
They didn't know. They didn't stimulate. To say a guy stimulated a pogrom is like blaming the victim.
Right.
There's no excuse for killing men, women, and children. Right. Nothing stimulates that. But what they
no, I'm not saying an excuse, but at the same time, if you got a crazy man next door with a shotgun that shoots everything that moves, and you go and you bang on his door, you might stimulate him to act crazy.
Yeah, there was anti-Semitism, and they thought, the Zionists or pre-Zionists thought that by shedding their Jewishness, there wouldn't be any anti-Semitism. But they were wrong. What happened was the Tsar Alexander II was killed, and one of the revolutionaries, one of the people who were involved with the assassination was a Jewish woman. So they blamed all the Jews. It was a bigotry thing, and that's exactly what Zionism is. Zionism is take a few Jews or people who were born from Jews and let them represent everybody. The anti-Semites take this woman who was involved with the assassination of the Tsar, and they say, all right, all the Jews, let's kill all the Jews. Yep. The idea of grouping the Jews into one tribe, that's anti-Semitic, and that's Zionism. Mm-hmm. Zionism takes the Jews, which is really a group of people that practice a religion, and tells the world we are a tribe. All the Jews in America, all the Jews in Italy, all the Jews in France, and all the Jews in Canada are a tribe. And our central headquarters is this country called Israel. It's a terrible thing. It breeds anti-Semitism, and the Zionists want it to breed anti-Semitism. Because you know what happens if there's anti-Semitism? Do you know what happens if, God forbid, there would be pogroms again? Guess what? People would run to Israel. And
it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy then.
And that's what they want.
Yeah.
Anybody that says the Jews are tribal is feeding anti-Semitism.
They're talking about Zionism. They're not talking about Judaism when they say that.
Yeah, well, they unfortunately, when people say this, they are talking about Judaism, but that's false. That's something the Zionists invented.
Right. I mean, they're not actually talking about Judaism, but what they're actually talking about is a Zionist construct.
That people don't know.
Right.
And if they would, if everybody would say, no, Zionism has nothing to do with the Jewish people. You have no historical connection with any land. It is not your homeland. Go back. You guys are from Russia. You guys are from Germany. You guys, you know what? Maybe even you're from Palestine. Maybe you're born in Israel. That's fine. But you're not the Jewish people. You're not the people of the Bible. Stop calling yourself that. You're a fraud. If the whole world would say that, Zionism would fall apart.
Well, that's why we have you on the program, Rabbi. And I must tell you, as a lifelong New Yorker, I've either lived in New York City or in its suburbs for 85, 90% of my life. And that means, when I was a kid growing up on Long Island, Rabbi, for what I knew, there were only two religions on earth, Catholic or Jewish. I didn't know anything about Protestant or anybody else. And unfortunately, a lot of Jewish people or people who identify as Jewish are confused about this too. And, people have their friends who are Jewish. Those friends of theirs are confused and they're getting bad information, maybe even with good intentions, but my father used to say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
100 years. Listen, people lived in Russia, were confused about communism. And they thought that we're a bunch of capitalist pigs, right? That's what they used to call us. Innocent people. State-sponsored 100 years of Zionist propaganda, fear-mongering, a rewriting of history. And who are they teaching this rewritten revisionist history to? Jewish people. They're not in control of the Saudi Arabian schools. They're not in control of the Egyptian schools. They're in control of the schools in Israel.
And to an extent, the schools here, I would say.
And to an extent, the schools here. Zionist,
and Europe and France.
And the Zionist propaganda targets the Jewish people. 100 years of state-sponsored propaganda. Yeah. And the truth is a lot of Jews are scared because the Holocaust did come out of nowhere and people did not expect it. And they rewrite and they bring people on these Holocaust trips to concentration camps and they instill fear into them and they tell them everybody's coming to kill you. Everyone's around the corner. You know, there are people that do that, people amongst the African-American community that do that in their community too, right?
Pre-traumatic stress.
Exactly. They're crazy, but it's 100 years of this. And Jews are like, okay, who's going to defend us in the next Holocaust? And Israel comes and they say, well, now the Jews have an army. And now the Jews have...
nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons, yeah. Finally, we should be happy. If the Jews would have had nuclear weapons, Hitler never would have made concentration camps, right? They begged...
Well, listen, we're running out of time, but in my book, the biggest nuclear weapon of all is the Almighty. And I don't think that...
Zionists don't have him on their side, that's
right. And so they need all the rest of this stuff, you know, but and they trash him. But like that. Anyway, Rabbi, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a while.
You're welcome.
Okay.
My pleasure's all.
Yes, and we'll have you back on a little sooner next time. All right, good friends. That's it for tonight. We'll be back on Thursday night.